Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Kalachandji Radha Kalachandji Shri Radhe Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam namaskritya Naram chaiva narottamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayam udirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashta praeshu vajreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. My regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and my rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality Godhead, whose praise with transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Aganatirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Alright, Krishna. So today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto... what's Canto 2? Yeah, Canto 2? Chapter 2. Does anyone know the title of Canto 2? Canto 2. The Cosmic Manifestation. Chapter 2, entitled The Lord in the Heart. And we are reading from text 33, just 37 today. So, just to recap, yesterday's class I was talking about kind of the process of what happens after, well, this chapter's been describing the process of meditation and the process of kind of going back to the spiritual world, but through like the process of kind of austerities and breath control and things like that. And in the last class we were talking about how the soul, it goes through the planet Shishumara, right? Like the sun planet, and makes its way back to Krishna. Do we have a mic today? Can someone read text 33?
For those who are wandering in the material universe, there is no more auspicious means of deliverance than what is aimed at in the direct devotional service of Lord Krishna.
Okay.
The great personality of Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Vedas 3 times, and after scrutinizingly examining them, he ascertained that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the highest perfection of religion.
We have 35. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is in every living being along with the individual soul. And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence.
O King, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify, and remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere.
Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life known as material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead.
Jai. So, what is Shukadeva Goswami saying we should do in these verses? Devotional service. And how did he come to that conclusion? There's a small hint in text 34. Yeah, so Shukadeva Goswami, he's a disciple of Srila Vyasadeva. And Srila Vyasadeva, well, he's actually the son of Vyasadeva and kind of the disciple. And then Vyasadeva is the disciple of Narada Muni. And then Narada Muni is the son and disciple of Lord Brahma. And it's saying that Lord Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Vedas 3 times. And it said that that's like what the Vedic scholars do. They study 3 times. And after scrutinizingly examining them, he ascertained that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the highest perfection of religion. So, basically, he's seen it all. He's checked everything out, and he's like, this is the best. So, that's just a little bit of context of what these verses are all pointing us towards. All right, text 33. Na hyato nya shiva panta vishata samshita viha vasudeve bhagavati bhakti yogo yato bhavet. So this Sanskrit, it sounds kind of similar to a verse in the first canto, 2nd chapter. It's Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. And so it's saying kind of the same thing in this verse. Anyone want to chant it? Nahyato sya shiva panta vishata samshita vita Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yogo Yato Bhavet. Nahyato nya Shiva Panta Vijita Samshita Viha Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Yato Bhavet. Nahyato nya Shiva Panta Vishata Samshita Viha Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Yato Bhavet. Nahyato na Shiva Panta Vishita Samshita Viha Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Yato Bhavet. Nahyato nya Shiva Panta Vishita Samshita Viha Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Yato Bhavet. Na, never. He, certainly. Ata, beyond this. Anyaha, any other. Shivaha, auspicious. Panta means. Vishata, wandering. Samshrito, in the material world. Iha, in this life. Vasudeva, Lord Krishna. Bhagavati, this personality of Godhead. Bhakti Yogaha, direct devotional service. Yataha, wherein. Bhavet, may result in. So I'm going to read the translation one more time. Okay, so who's wandering in the material universe? We are. So this verse is for us. Alright, can someone read the first paragraph of the purport?
As will be clarified in the next verse, devotional service or direct bhakti yoga is the only absolute and auspicious means of deliverance from the grip of material existence. There are many indirect methods for deliverance from the clutches of material existence, but none of them is as easy and auspicious as bhakti yoga. The means of jnana and yoga and other allied disciplines are not independent in delivering a performer. Such activities help one to reach the stage of bhakti yoga after many, many years. In the Bhagavad Gita 12.5, it is said that those who are attached to the impersonal feature of the absolute are liable to many troubles in the pursuit of their desired goal, and the empiricist philosophers, searching after the absolute truth, realize the importance of Vasudeva realization as all in all after many, many births. Bhagavad Gita 7.19. As far as yoga systems are concerned, it is also said in the Bhagavad Gita 6.47 that amongst the mystics who pursue the absolute truth, the one who is always engaged in the service of the Lord is the greatest of all. The last instruction in the Bhagavad Gita 18.66 advises full surrendering unto the Lord, leaving aside all other engagements or different processes for self-realization and liberation from material bondage. And the purport of all Vedic literatures is to induce one to accept the transcendental loving service of the Lord by all means.
As already explained in the text of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, either direct bhakti yoga or the means which ultimately culminates in bhakti yoga, without any tinge of fruitive activity, constitute the highest form of religion. Everything else is simply a waste of time for the performer.
Srila Sridhar Swami and all other acharyas like Jiva Goswami agree that bhakti yoga is not only easy, simple, natural, and free from trouble, but is the only source of happiness for the human being.
All right, Jai. So, oh, this is a lot louder, right? Did it get louder?
I think it will help the people online. Otherwise,
Oh, okay.
you can't hear them.
Yeah. So, in the purport, it's kind of saying that bhakti yoga is the only absolute and auspicious means of deliverance from the grip of material existence. So it's kind of saying that this is the only way. Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nam eva kevala, kalo nasyeva nasyeva gatiranyata. That there's no other way. And so I'm curious to ask you guys, why is there no other way to get to the spiritual world unless you do devotional service?
In the last paragraph it says, it says that it's natural. And it's also talking about, it's the only source of happiness for the human being. So if you had an option to choose your process of devotional service to go back to God, then it would probably be the most natural one.
What's happening in the spiritual world?
Devotional service.
Devotional service. So it makes sense that if you were to try to get to the spiritual world, you have to do devotional service. So the means of jnana and yoga or other allied disciplines are not independent in delivering a performer. So, what do you guys think of that? It's it's an interesting sentence to understand.
Remembering last week we were talking about how bhakti yoga encompasses everything. Everything's within bhakti yoga. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's the main point that Srila Prabhupada is making, is that jnana and yoga alone are not independent in delivering. And actually, Krishna is only going to see you, and he's only going to help you out if you practice bhakti. You can do jnana and yoga for so long, and it, unless there's some kind of bhakti, it won't create some tangible and absolute result. All right. Let's see, what other points in the purport? Yeah, so Bhagavad Gita, among Of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with yoga, and he is the highest of all. That is my opinion. That's the verse that's being quoted here. Yeah, all yogis, the one with great faith. Yeah, it's interesting. Krishna's basically just putting out there that that those yogis are the topmost and those are the best. Nandabraj?
So the yogi or the jnani is pretty satisfied in what they're doing, right? They're making, advancement in their way. It's very slow, but they're making advancement. So what is it that kicks them out of saying, oh, wait a minute, maybe I should do this? What is it that can put somebody on the path of bhakti if they're already into a system that is providing them results?
Sorry, can you, yeah.
So my question is that when somebody's already performing some kind of system of yoga, either through jnani or karma yoga or these things, what is it that kicks them out of that and takes them to bhakti yoga?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that, gives them, perpetuates them to move to bhakti yoga?
And thinking of an example of some jnanis who became devotees, it's a pretty famous example. Anyone have an idea? It was 4 of them. 4 Kumaras. And it's explained that they had already, actually there's a few examples. There's another one I'm just thinking of right now, and he's blue. And he's talking right now. Shukadev Goswami. And they both have a similar theme in that they were already perfected in jnana and yoga, but still they were attracted to hearing the transcendental narrations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I've heard it's different in a few different sections, but at least the main one I've heard is that the 4 Kumaras smelled the tulsi leaves from the feet of Vishnu, and that's what attracted them. But then also, I don't really think it's that we have to totally get rid of jnana and yoga, but we can use it to assist us in our Krishna consciousness. I'm thinking maybe we can read over some translations more. I didn't really have too much time to develop some thoughts on this. I found out I was kind of giving class this morning, so we can read over the translations a little bit more. Prabhu?
All these other systems of yoga, they're all like stepping stones, It's like Srila Prabhupada gives the example of taking step by step or taking the elevator, Bhakti yoga is compared to the elevator, Why take all the trouble of going step by step and, you don't know when you're going to reach the ultimate perfection.
Mm.
So that could be an impetus for people to take up Bhakti yoga,
Nice point. You ever thought, Nandabraj?
So in the sense of the Kumaras and Sukadev Goswami, they were already liberated, right?
Mm.
And by smelling the tulsi leaves, they became attracted to Krishna consciousness or bhakti yoga. I'm just thinking about people in the material world, as Srila Prabhupada was saying in purport, that are in the translation is talking about the people in the material existence. And so we've seen in the material world that there's so many people with different processes and stuff like jnana and karma yoga and stuff. So I'm wondering, if they don't have the opportunity to smell the tulsi leaf, if they're not already liberated and they get these things, they're like, oh, they can definitely see this is better than what I'm doing. For a person who's in common in the material world, what is it that bumps them off of these different processes?
I think it's kind of like how Prabhu was saying, is that it's a ladder. And actually, we can see from the example of Brahma that he studied the Vedas 3 times. And kind of one of the points of this purport was that, or the points of this section is that if you stick to jnana or karma or yoga, eventually it's going to lead you to bhakti. It's all a gradual process leading up to bhakti. Brahma studied the Vedas 3 times, and he found the conclusion. He was like, this is just what makes sense. This is just what works. It's better than the other processes. And so in the purport it was saying that Samahatma Sadurlabha, that after many births and deaths in the material world, one may come to self-realization, but such a soul is very rare. And so that's kind of the whole point of the material world, is that everything will gradually lead you to bhakti at some point. But it's like Prabhu was saying, the ladder or the elevator. So jnana, eventually it'll take you there. It might take you a really long time, many lifetimes. Same with karma and yoga. Tintarani?
Oh, just like a thought I had was, like people in the material world, and like how they get attracted to this type of stuff. Like even when we like go out or we talk to people, and people come to programs, it's always like the easiest people to talk to are like the yoga people, because they're already doing, like they're already kind of putting themselves, I guess they're practicing a form of yoga. They're practicing whether it's like physical yoga or breathing or something. They've already like taken those first few steps. So like, I don't know, they're vegan already, or they're taking good care of their health. So then it's a little bit easier for them to like accept bhakti. Or sometimes also like really educated people, it's a little bit easier for them to take bhakti because they've studied so much and they're so curious and they want to know more. So I was thinking about, like, those are people following different types of like yoga already, and then they're always more receptive than like some random person that you stop on the street who like doesn't have that background. So they've already taken maybe like 2 out of 3 steps. And then, you know, you're just giving them like that opportunity to take the elevator.
So they're more receptive to devotees, to hearing from devotees.
Yeah, people who, I don't know, that's just my, like what I'm thinking, but like people who've already kind of started on that yoga process, whether it's like jnana yoga or something like that, it's easier when you talk to them about bhakti yoga.
So people may be more open-minded. Some people may just stick to their own. Some people may stick to their own religious path or understanding, but people like the people that were mentioned, you know, they may be more open-minded to accepting spirituality outside their normal realm of thinking or belief.
I like this point that Dina and is making about that they're more perceptive of devotees, because you know, when we read from Srila Prabhupada's books, we're getting in contact with a devotee, and then it's, you know, can we accept that or not? Can we hear it, basically?
Mm-hmm.
So the devotee is, you know, giving the opportunity for the person to come to bhakti yoga. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, I like the point. I was thinking like people who are, it's like kind of what's the easiest person to become a devotee, and it's usually, you know, like, oh, if they're very sattvic, then it'll probably be easier for them to take to the process. Although sometimes being sattvic might be a blockage. It's like, oh, we have the crystals and like we're good with that, and like the dream catchers or whatever. But I was thinking like when you're like already a liberated soul, like you don't have anarthas anymore to like fight with. I'm kind of thinking it seems like it's just so much easier for them, even though they took the ladder, but the ladder, like, it got them ready to take the final step onto the roof of bhakti yoga.
What do you think about Prashad?
I love Prashad.
Who would not appreciate Mukti or Talapu's community?
Mercy of the devotees, Jai. Maybe we can go through these points, see if anyone has reflections. So Krishna is in everyone's heart as Paramatma, and this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. So it's kind of saying that, Krishna's in our heart, and the way we know that he's in our heart is just by the fact that we can see, and the fact that we can take help from the intelligence. That intelligence is coming from him. Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hridisani vishto mata smritir jnanapavanam cha. And so he's like, from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Yeah. It's a nice point that Shukadeva Goswami is making. I'm kind of thinking, how does it connect to the rest of it? Does anyone have an idea of how this connects to the other texts here? Yeah. And maybe we can just go through this purport quickly, just as the last few minutes. Dintarnik, do you want to read the first paragraph?
The general argument of the common man is that since the Lord is not visible to our eyes, how can one either surrender unto him or render transcendental loving service unto him? To such a common man, there is a practical suggestion given by Srila Shukadeva Goswami as to how one can perceive the Supreme Lord by reason and perception. Actually, the Lord is not perceivable by our present materialized senses, but when one is convinced of the presence of the Lord by a practical service attitude, there is a revelation by the Lord's mercy, and such a pure devotee of the Lord can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. He can perceive that intelligence is the form, direction of the Paramatma, plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. The presence of Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize, even for the common man. The procedure is as follows. One can perceive one's self-identification and feel positively that he exists. You may not feel it very abruptly, but by using a little intelligence, he can feel that he is not the body. He can feel that the hand, the leg, the head, the hair, and the limbs are all his bodily parts and parcels. But as such, the hand, the leg, the head, etc., cannot be identified with his self. Therefore, just by using intelligence, he can distinguish and separate his self from other things that he sees. So the natural conclusion is that the living being, either man or beast, is the seer, and he sees besides himself all other things. So there is a difference between the seer and the seen. Now, by a little use of intelligence, we can also readily agree that the living being who sees the things beyond himself by ordinary vision has no power to see or move independently. All our ordinary actions and perceptions depend on various forms of energy supplied to us by nature in various combinations. Our senses of perception and of action, that is to say, our 5 perceptive senses of 1, hearing, 2, touch, 3, sight, 4, taste, and 5, smell, as well as our 5 senses of action, namely 1, hands, 2, legs, 3, speech, 4, evacuation organs, and 5, reproductive organs, and also our 3 subtle senses, namely 1, mind, 2, intelligence, and 3, ego. 13 senses in all are supplied to us by various arrangements of gross or subtle forms of natural energy. And it is equally evident that our objects of perception are nothing but the products of the inexhaustible permutations and combinations of the forms taken by natural energy. As this conclusively proves that the ordinary living being has no independent power of perception or of motion, and as we undoubtedly feel our existence being conditioned by nature's energy, we conclude that he who sees is spirit, and that the senses as well as the objects of perception are material. The spiritual quality of the seer is manifest in our dissatisfaction with the limited state of materially conditioned existence. That is the difference between spirit and matter. There are some less intelligent arguments that matter develops the power of seeing and moving as a certain organic development, but such an argument cannot be accepted because there is no experimental evidence that matter has anywhere produced a living entity. Trust no future, however pleasant. Idle talks regarding future development of matter into spirit are actually foolish because no matter has ever developed the power of seeing or moving in any part of the world. Therefore, it is definite that matter and spirit are two different identities, and this conclusion is arrived by the use of intelligence. Now, we come to the point that the things which are seen by a little use of intelligence cannot be animate unless we accept someone as a user or director of the intelligence. Intelligence gives one direction, like some higher authority, and the living being cannot see or move or eat or do anything without the use of intelligence. When one fails to take advantage of intelligence, he becomes a deranged man, and so a living being is dependent on intelligence, or the direction of a superior being. Such intelligence is all-pervading. Every living being has this intelligence, and this intelligence, being the direction of some higher authority, is just like a father giving direction to his son. The higher authority, who is present and residing within every individual living being, is the super self.
Try. So, yeah, that was like a really long paragraph. I guess a major point I saw is that we're not the body, we're the soul. Any other comments on that paragraph before we move on? Oh.
I was really, this last part of the paragraph about the intelligence and about the taking advantage of the intelligence. And the intelligence is giving the person the direction of their life. And so it really, to me, dove into the modes of material nature. And when you can see people who are in the mode of ignorance, they don't really have a purpose for life, or their intelligence is not developed on what where they're going, what they're doing. And you get an impassion, and you can see that some people's intelligence is more like how they're going to build something, about how they're going to get great wealth or something. Anyways, build whatever. And then, bring it up to the mode of goodness. That what would the mode of goodness be? We could give an example of somebody who's created their intelligence or developed an intelligence in the mode of goodness.
Maybe somebody that's doing their duty or their dharma and being like fully satisfied in doing that. I feel like that would be more goodness.
Jahiri?
In this purport, they're talking about the intelligence is directing the living entity, like a father giving direction to his son. But I always forget the 5 factors for action as explained in Bhagavad Gita, and so I was thinking that could be like kind of relevant as another viewpoint on this point, and so I was wondering if anyone could refresh my memory as to the 5 factors of action.
Which chapter is that in?
That I believe it's is it 13? Chapter 13 on Brush? Okay. I think it's chapter 13, the modes of nature, and of course, Krishna is the ultimate cause, right? But it's very interesting because there's and basically he's saying Krishna like in the heart, right? But then the other 4 factors, like these are all like influencing factors. You know what I'm talking about?
It's like,
Yeah.
Are you physically there, and are you able to do that? And then it was like, do you have the willpower to? It was, I don't remember it exactly, but it was something like, first off, is Krishna going to sanction it? Second is like, are you going to be there to be there? Then like, it's like physically, is the time, place, circumstance all set up for the action to take place? It was kind of, I didn't understand it too well. I don't remember it, but that's like a small idea of what I do remember of that.
It's very interesting. Let me see if I can look it up really quick. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll pass the mic.
Maybe we can get this second paragraph and then you'll have it.
I was thinking about how, reading this, it was talking about how the intelligence is like directly related to super soul, and like you're getting your qualities of intelligence like from Krishna. I feel like I usually associate the mind with the intelligence, but I think they're 2 very separate things. Like the intelligence is like it's like knowing things and like seeing things and making conclusions and stuff like that. The mind, I feel like, kind of is more like opinions and like thoughts, just like anything. So I feel, okay, there's intelligence and there's mind and there's ego. Those are all separate things. They're not all the same. So I feel like they are the same thing, just in my day-to-day life, but they're not.
Jai, nice point. Jai Hari Prabhu found the text.
Okay, it's chapter 18, Bhagavad Gita chapter 18, verse 14. The place of action, the body, the performer, the various senses, the many kinds of endeavor, and ultimately the supersoul. These are the 5 factors of action.
Yeah, I like that. It's like your endeavor or like your willpower, and then it's your body being like able to do the action, and then super soul. What were the other 2?
You got endeavor, and which one else did you get?
Your body and super soul.
Okay, and then it says the performer and the various senses. So I also like how it makes a distinction between the body and the performer. And that's very nice. Yeah. And the senses. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, it's 8:29. If that's it, we could wrap up. Thank you all for tolerating. Impromptu class. Glad I could read with you all. But yeah, all right. Should we wrap up? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.